Hello everybody, welcome back to Wolfeei. Today we're going to be ranking every MCC game. Now before we get into this, okay, I must say, because people are otherwise going to mention it, Ripcord literally made a video about this like a day ago, but I was already going to make a video regarding like overall Minecraft event games, because obviously there's a lot of new games recently in the Minecraft event scene that appeared. There's Minecraft Mayhem and PB that introduced some new stuff. Now MCC threw Railroad Rush into the mix. There's a lot of new stuff to look at. And before we get into that, because that will be a video for like a week from now, maybe a couple days from now, because I want to rank every single event that has updated games before we get into like the overall picture, or at least the most of it. We're gonna go into the MCC games specifically, also because we just saw MCC Season 4 kickoff with some gameplay changes, etc., and I think it'll be interesting. So yeah, wanted to shout out to Ripcord. Also, pretty clear from the Ripcord video that this guy really likes PvP. Mine's gonna look a little different because PvP is not my favorite, okay, in Minecraft events, and I know it's a somewhat shared opinion with some of the other players that I'm friends with. Also, shout out Sandwich Lord. Alright, let's get into it. So, we're going to be ranking every MCC game on this tier list, which is, I think, every active game that we've seen either in Season 4 or Season 3 of MCC. And I'll just go in alphabetical order based on my opinions, and I'll try to explain a little bit as to why I pick certain things and how I rank them. Also want to say that a D tier in the MCC games tier list isn't a bad game. We're just ranking the games comparatively, really, for the most part, obviously. Alright, starting off with Ace Race. I'd say Ace Race is definitely like an S/A. Now, I understand that a lot of people will say this is S because racing games are really, really fun to watch. Obviously, there's a lot of competition in it. And honestly, like I said, it's debatable. S/A. I would call it like an A plus or an S minus, however you want to say it. Either way, my reasoning behind it is Ace Race, I think, is a really good way, and racing games in general is a really good way to incorporate movement into an event without getting too technical, too mechanical, which I think is really nice and welcomed for a variety of different skill levels. Ace Race is also a game that is both forgiving in terms of like, if you miss one jump or if you miss something, you can come back later because there's skips, there's whatever, there's optimization, there's everything, and I think that makes a really good game. I think it's very interesting. My thing that's holding back Ace Race, which is mostly just an MCC specific thing, is tridents. I was talking to Misty and this might have been on the watch party, I don't know. But tridents in MCC are obviously a little goofy because they have custom tridents, and the way that they function is by holding them. This is a Minecraft mechanic that isn't vanilla, that you need to learn to be able to perform in this game, which is a little tricky, but MCC kind of gets away with it because there's multiple things in MCC that you need to learn in advance to be able to perform in the game, be that elytras for rocket spleef or whatever else is there. So they get away with it, but that's the main thing that I think is holding it back. Obviously, another thing that's always an issue with racing games, and this also applies to elytra racing games, which MCC doesn't have, is map knowledge. Map knowledge, it's a thing where if a new map is played for the first time, it's fantastic. Everyone has a first gameplay experience, no advantage at all, etc. Second time the event's played, obviously the player roster will be slightly different, but there will be some returning people from the previous event. Every single returning player will have at least the slightest bit of an advantage because they already played the map. So yeah, that's my thing about Ace Race and racing games in general, but I think overall I'd say Ace Race is probably one of the better movement games in MCC. I don't know if it's the best, but I'll try to rank the games comparatively as well, but that'll be a little bit difficult. Next up is BattleBox. BattleBox is an A tier, and I'll explain why. BattleBox, I think, in my opinion, is either the best or second best PvP game in MCC. Possibly controversial. I understand that the BattleBox format has been done and redone an absolute crazy amount of times. I know there's a lot of adaptations, whether that is like an extraction or something else. It's common nowadays, but BattleBox was the first round robin game, and I think it deserves its flowers for that reason. I also think having a round robin style PvP game is really forgiving yet again. Compared to something like survival games, if you mess up in BattleBox, that's just 1 out of your 9 rounds that you waste. It's not that big of a deal. Thank you for whoever followed me on Twitch. You waste this 1 round for BattleBox. You miss out on this 1 opportunity to gain coins. You have 8 other opportunities to come back. It's good. Also has strategy to it, especially with the recent map and kits that we saw. You have different kits with different values, which is really good. You have impact on the game. You can divert your skill set with your teammates very efficiently, which I think is nice. And it's like a condensed format. SG is, I'm just gonna compare it to SG a lot because it's the other like big I'd say one of the other big genres of PvP game. And SG relies on a lot of other skill sets, and in terms of combat you have a lot of utility that you have to consider. BattleBox also has this utility, but at least the utility is fully 100% consistent between the teammates and the teams. Everyone gets the same opportunity to use kits or have the items, etc., etc. So that's very good. I think BattleBox is just, like I said, forgiving. I feel like it's not the hardest to adjust to as someone who is maybe a little bit worse at the game in terms of PvP. I think it's good. Moving on, Bingo but Fast. Bingo but Fast, I would say, is like an A/B tier. And I'll explain yet again why. I'm not sure. I'll put it in B for now because it looks nice. I might put it in A as I talk about it. We'll get into it. Bingo, but Fast, is a pretty good adaptation of Bingo, and I think Bingo games in general are decent in events. I wouldn't say they're perfect. I wouldn't say they're bad. They're decent. Because they test another skill set that is pretty relevant within Minecraft, which you can call it speedrunning, you can call it survival. Either way, it tests a skill set about efficiency and bingo. And I think it's interesting. I think bingo games are usually pretty fun. They can be pretty fun, and I think Bingo to Fast, like I said, is a pretty good adaptation. Not only does it have just the regular board with items, but in the board itself you have tasks and objectives that you can complete, which is fun. It's a unique spin to it, which we were going to do for Block Wars, and then MCC sniped it, which, hey, different teams can have different ideas at the same time. Obviously, it's completely unrelated. Just wanted to mention it because I thought it was pretty funny. But yeah, I think having the objectives throws in a nice, a little twist to the game. I think that's very, very fun. I think the kit that players are given is a nice quality of life change that allows for more efficient gameplay. Being able to TP it to your teammates, having an elytra. Having really fast tools. I think auto smelting is a thing too. I could be wrong. Actually, no, that might have just been mayhem. Whatever. Either way, I think Bingo's pretty good. But like I said, I think it's a good adaptation of Bingo, but Bingo games are usually kind of just okay in events, which is why it would land at B tier. The way I see it, by the way, is C tier is average, B tier above average, A tier is good, S tier is great, and then D tier is below average, is how I would consider it. And then within the context of MCC, I'd say Bingo is above average. I think it's, like I said, a game that's a base game with a good adaptation of the base game. So that's there you go. Dodgebolt, immediate S tier, above Ace Race. Dodgebolt has to go above Ace Race. Dodgebolt is just the best finale game in any event. It's based on a sport, obviously, which is dodgeball. Personally, slightly biased perhaps, I really, really loved dodgeball in high school and middle school and whenever you played it. I really, really liked it. So I really love dodgeball. And dodgebolt, as much as it obviously plays very differently compared to how you would play it in real life, you're not going to roll up to the court with a bow and arrow. I think the adaptation is very nice. it gives every player the opportunity to have impact in the finale game, which is a super important factor for finale games. But it also doesn't rely on skill too much, which is in part the reason why anyone can have impact. You know, yes, shooting a bow and arrow is skill, but it's a skill that's is based on aim rather than based on do you know how to crit spam for PvP? Do you know how to force momentum for parkour, etc., 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 right? Dodging in Minecraft is also a very unique skill that you don't really test, I guess. It's more so based on instinct, I'd say, for Dodge Bolt, because whenever do you really have to worry about jumping around to avoid an arrow that's being shot at you? So yeah. Dodge Bolt, best event finale game, thus landing it for thus far the top spot on the tier list. Next up is Grid Runners. Grid Runners is a very tough one because I would say in concept, Grid Runners is like a pretty solid A tier, but if we're talking about current Grid Runners, I'd say it's a little lower. I don't know if I'd call it lower than Bingo, but I guess lower than Bingo would make sense. Because of the amount of gameplay changes that are being made to it. And this is not something that I could really fault the Noxer for, because purely in design of Grid Runners, it is a game that is really hard to keep up with in terms of new content and frequent updates, especially how in Season 3 events were just being fired one after another, just constantly. You know, every 3 weeks there would be an MCC. Updating the Grid Runners content properly is super difficult. You'd either have to divert all your resources into updating Grid Runners, or how they did it, divert like half of your resources into Grid Runners and then the other half into whatever else is left, right? But yeah, Grid Runners, I think a prime example of a great adaptation of Grid Runners is Grid Runners in the Bedrock map version of what the Noxer made. I think that one is better, obviously. I feel like the available mechanics and just the more customization within it is really cool. I hope we'll see some of the levels that are in the Bedrock map maybe make their appearance in MCC one day. Maybe that is another reason as to why Grid Runners wasn't in this most recent event. I assume the Reddit feedback was part of it too, but maybe we'll see a more significantly updated Grid Runners. Maybe my theory could still be correct, where they reduce the amount of Grid Runners rooms, but maybe make them a little bit bigger. I don't know how much workload that would be, but hopefully that would make it easier for them. I just hope that they figure out a way to constantly be able to update Grid Runners. But like I said, base concept, I like it. Definitely above average. I think it's a good team game. You test teamwork in a variety of ways. The one thing that I think is a little unfortunate in Grid Runners, or I guess one of the other things, is that some rooms can kind of be a knowledge diff. You know, if you happen to have a redstone room and you happen to have that redstone room appear in an MCC Pride or an MCC Underdogs, the Ludwig team's gonna have a really tough time with the redstone room, whereas the Hermitcraft team might absolutely wipe everyone in that and just completely sweep. So that's one thing that I think is difficult for Grid Runners, but I think it lands itself in B tier pretty comfortably. I think it's solid. Okay, good. Next up, Hole in the Wall. Now, this may be some slight personal bias, because I'm sure a lot of people would put Hole in the Wall like right there, maybe just mid, because Hole in the Wall, it's a game that can't really be updated properly because the core gameplay of it will always remain the same. There's walls coming at you. You jump through the wall. If you don't jump through the wall, you are probably dead. It's simple as that. You can have returning walls, you can have super fast walls, fake walls, etc. Doesn't really change the core gameplay that much. Honestly, realistically speaking, the thing that's changed the gameplay the most as of recent, probably, is the maps. The floor being different and the floor changing in a different way has been pretty impactful in how the game is being played, because you actually have to pay attention to where you're jumping instead of just being like, well, this is just a donut shape. Anyways, Hole in the Wall, I am biased, but I must factor in that it is a game that probably gets a little bit stale if you're not a fan of it, because, like said, the gameplay changes are very minimal. There's not a lot you can do. So I think it lands in B tier, but I don't know where in B tier I would put it. I'd say it's probably above Bingo and Grid Runners because in concept, I think that Hole in the Wall is a very unique style of game. I think it's very fun, and I think it probably lands itself a pretty nice above average spot. But like I said, I think it's just the repetitiveness of it that, especially in the long term, going forward in MCC, if it is in rotation frequently, could maybe, cause it to become one of the less popular games, according to the fans. I'm trying to see if I should reconsider some placements because, like, Grid Runners being below Hole in the Wall and Bingo feels a little criminal because it's such a good concept, but there's factors to it that are holding it back. But I feel like it should be higher. We'll get to it later, though. Next up, Build Mart. Build Mart. Look, I understand Build Mart for a lot of people gonna land in the D tier, and probably, if I'm keeping it real, it's probably gonna stay there because as much as I think playing Build Mart is fine, I've played in my history of testing, I've played the original Build Mart a couple times, or actually a lot of times because I was mostly a Season 1 tester. I've played the renewed version, which is the same as it is now, pretty much, version of Build Mart, a handful of times, and I think the game's okay. Obviously, one of the main reasons why it was so disliked is because one of the most popular creators who has ever played in MCC in history, who currently obviously no longer plays, was not a fan of this game at all. And obviously, a lot of the audience who watched MCC came from that creator, so a lot of the audience didn't like the game. But I think that the tide may shift there a little bit going forward, as it seems like the audience for MCC is shifting more in the SMP creator type of way, but not the Dream SMP, but more the YouTuber SMP, like the Life and the Hermit, etc., etc. And I think that crowd might like Build Mart a bit more. But it's something that the Noxer can't really commit to it. Also because there's still a handful of creators in the event who still wouldn't like Build Mart, and I don't think, it's free real estate to just suddenly put it in a lot. But I hope to see it back in Pride, if that is to be expected to be the next event going forward for MCC Season 4. Hope it's back in Pride. But anyways, the reason why I think Build Mart is slightly below average is because as a viewer, I find it pretty difficult to be engaged. And this was another issue I had with the newest game, which was Railroad Rush, just in a different way because I feel like Build Mart is just a bit overwhelming, and Railroad Rush is a lot more simple, and I assume Railroad Rush is the temporary replacement for Build Mart, at least in the standard events where Build Mart usually never appears. But just having the resource gathering, the back and forth, having specific roles, having to go, just all the communication and just everything, it was a little much. And it was, like I said, not easy to watch because it was kind of boring, which unfortunately kind of happens a decent amount with the team games. If the team that's playing the team game isn't actively engaged in the team game, they're not teaming in the team game properly, then it's just going to be kind of a snooze fest. And I think Build Mart is one of those games where unless you're watching Korean, I feel like it's very unlikely that you're going to have that level of engagement. But I could be wrong. I know there's a lot of Build Mart fans or stans out there that completely understand that every game will have its fan base. It's just not for me personally. But I think most people would agree that it's probably below average in terms of MCC games, okay? Not in terms of every event game, because I'm sure if you consider every event game, Build Mart's probably average or above average. In terms of MCC, below average. Next up is Meltdown. Now, Meltdown is an interesting one because I haven't played Meltdown ever. Then again, I've also never played Bingo but Fast. That's actually a lie. I played the old version, but the new version I've never played. But I've played Bingo games that are close enough, so I can somewhat relate to it. Meltdown, I've literally never touched. That wasn't a thing when I was a tester, so I have no personal experience with playing it. But Meltdown is so cool to watch. I love watching Meltdown. It's so hype. So I kind of have to put it in A tier. I do understand one very big criticism with Meltdown though, and that is the RNG aspect to it. You know, spawning can completely mess up the chances of your team doing well. I know there's been some instances in the past where players have had unlucky spawns, and for that reason they completely despise this game. And I understand that. I know that there's some unfortunate cases there, and obviously, as someone who does watch parties, I've witnessed a lot of early round eliminations, but I've also witnessed some absolute greatness. Okay, the purpled clutch round 3 solo, making it from early game. 3 of his teammates get fully eliminated to him just completely winning the round. Insane. Okay, and I'm sure there's other examples as well, but genuinely though, I think Meltdown is really cool to watch. Another thing that I like about Meltdown is that it is a PvP game that does not have melee in it. It is an exclusively ranged PvP game. And for those of you who know about Block Wars and my opinions on Block Wars, you know that I really like Extraction for that reason, which is also one of the main reasons why when Misty and I decided to redesign Extraction, we were like, let's just take out the PvP or the melee PvP, because who likes the melee PvP in this game, which was exclusively the top frags, by the way. But yeah, Meltdown, very nice for that reason, which is why I think it lands pretty high. The reason I put it below BattleBox is because of that opportunity value. There is just going to be 50% of the teams, most likely, that are going to get absolutely dookied on during this game and have a not so great time, and the other half are going to have a great time. Whereas BattleBox, you know, you have that that opportunity for every single round to kind of have a soft reset, you know, which is good. Another thing where I think Meltdown gains a lot of bonus points is it being more accessible in terms of gameplay and skill. Melee PvP is a little bit more tricky. Meltdown is simple. You shoot, you land your hit, they freeze. You unfreeze them, it takes a little bit of time, but you unfreeze. Simple, okay? Simple gameplay. Let me take a little sip of lemonade before I continue. Okay, time to log in. I think we've done about half. Close enough. Yeah, we've done about half. Next up, Parkour Tag. Now, Parkour Tag is a tricky one. I'm going to default it in C tier. I think it'll end up a bit higher, but probably, maybe. Parkour Tag, I think, is a very interesting game because I think in concept it works really well, but it clearly isn't the biggest fan favorite in terms of the player base. I know that Parkour Tag is one of the games that has been skipped probably relatively frequently. If we're looking at just its track record of getting skipped, it's pretty high. And I understand, I guess, because I don't think Parkour Tag scoring-wise has had the biggest impact historically, as opposed to BattleBox, where BattleBox can actually have a lot of impact. It doesn't always have a lot of impact, but it can, because Parkour Tag as a round-robin game functions a little differently. It's based on, the scoring is based on surviving, I think, and then also how quickly you hunt compared to the other team, I think, which is, I mean, I don't know how big of a point gap is in that. I think, though, in terms of gameplay, Parkour Tag is very interesting because it tests parkour ability in a unique way. It's not, hey, do you know how to make this jump? You know, how like a Parkour Warrior or like Jumping Mad or whatever, right? How these types of parkour games do that. Or even Move. You know, it's not about like, hey, here's this niche type of parkour or this like difficult parkour jump that you'll need to really pay attention to. It is efficiency-based parkour. you need to be able to be comfortable with movement to do extra well in parkour tag, and it's just kind of hopping around. You know, the hardest jumps that you'll find in this could be a 5-1, but it's not going to be a requirement for you to make it. It's going to be a thing where you can optimize your movement by making this 4-block jump or however more difficult jump, but you're always going to have like 1 or 2 more options. There's always going to be multiple options of movement available at the same time, and I think that's really, really cool. I think that's very interesting. So I'm at least going to have to move it up to B tier. It's definitely above average, which I think, you know, I stand by that. But do I think I enjoy that more than the other games? Honestly, I might. And keep in mind, I'm also not factoring in music, because if I factored in music, Parkour Tag would be A tier, because I think Parkour Tag's music is one of the best, if not the best song in MCC, because it goes so hard, okay? It goes so hard. But I'm gonna say that Parkour Tag is, better than Hole in the Wall. I think Parkour Tag can be very entertaining to watch if you're watching the right POV. And one of the main reasons why I have this opinion is because when I made my MCC 20, the movie, or like the overall event highlights, that video, I don't know how long that was, but it took a long time to make. The Parkour Tag section just hits so hard, okay? I recommend on my main channel, the Wolfeei channel, you know, if you haven't watched it yet, watch the MCC 20, the movie video, or whatever I called it, and just watch the thing. Parkour Tag is fantastic, okay? That section, the music hits, the timing, the gameplay, it's hype. I love it, okay? I love it for that reason. I also was really good at Parkour Tag when I was a tester. I'm honestly debating on moving it up. I might even move it to A tier. I think it's a pretty good game. I just know that people aren't a fan of it, and I think it's mainly because of the scoring. Because I feel like Parkour Tag is one of those games that ends up getting picked late, but I don't feel like people dislike it, but I feel like people maybe have started to dislike it. I don't know why. I don't know what people's opinion of it is, but I feel like I'd like it. So, honestly, I'm gonna move it up to A tier. It's really fun. I really like it. But do I like it more than Hole in the Wall? Not like a whole tier more. Top of B tier it is. It's above average, but like the most above average. Sure. Moving on, Parkour Warrior. Starting in C tier. Okay, starting in C tier to discuss it. Parkour Warrior, I think, is a pretty good adaptation of skill-based parkour, of a skill-based parkour game. I think in terms of continuation on top of what Parkour Warrior used to be like, the classic original just base map, I think it's a very good way to expand on the original concept. You know, you have this level of variation and randomization in the course. You have different styles of parkour and movement. You know, you have these blinking levels that are unique. You have a scoring system where players aren't forced to play a certain course. They have optional levels they can warp back at any time if they so desire. And in terms of finishing, there's an easy finish, there's a medium finish, there's a hard finish. There's a lot of options, and I think that's very nice and welcoming, which at least lands it above average. My issue with Parkour Warrior is the effect of MCC Island that has been put on Parkour Warrior. Almost every level that you see in Parkour Warrior in the event has been on MCC Island, and as a viewer, that makes me less interested in watching it. Because I've seen players, myself included, through my own POV on MCCI, complete these courses. You know, it's no longer like, ooh, how are they going to do this? Ooh, you know, maybe sometimes you'll see a player more efficiently complete a certain level. But that is such a niche part of Parkour Warrior that I don't know if that would, you know, give it enough of a boost in terms of how much I like it. But I must say, it's above average, I'd say. Just in concept, well, okay. In terms of MCC though, in terms of MCC, Parkour Warrior is average. But in terms of designing a straight up parkour game, I think it's good compared to other event games. I think it's pretty good. But in terms of MCC, average, because of like I said, the MCCification of the game is you know, it's kind of holding it back quite a bit. And there is the whole thing about purely being based on a single skill, really, which is parkour, which is a mechanical skill. I'm personally more of a fan of the games that aren't super mechanically skill-based. And I know, yes, BattleBox is high up, but okay, not everything is consistent these days in the Wolfeei Extras channel. Yeah, Parkour Warrior, average. In terms of MCC, average. Next up, the big dog, the most recent edition. Well, not the big dog. The big dog is SOT, but that one's going to be an easy clear if we're going to keep it real. Railroad Rush. Railroad Rush is up next, and I think Railroad Rush, at least above average. We'll get into why. Railroad Rush, I think, is a very fun adaptation of an existing game concept. If you don't know, it's based on the game Unrailed, I think. Fun fact, I've never played Unrailed. I've seen it being played before. I've seen people make a little train track in some, like, a 2D game or whatever. But I think it's a very fun way to make a game about minecarts. I saw Azuma talk about it already on stream. Talking about like, oh, this is like, I'm excited for this railroad game because apparently Azuma has been trying to make a minecart based minigame for years now. And I think MCC pretty successfully accomplished a game like it. One thing with Railroad Rush is that it is another efficiency slash strategy based team game similar to Build Mart. In terms of genre, obviously Build Mart is going to be considered a building game, even though that's kind of irrelevant. Railroad Rush is similar, where you have to allocate your teammates in a certain way to be as efficient as possible. But I think Railroad Rush is a bit more interesting and engaging because the gameplay is a lot simpler. You know, you have a minecart that goes forward. You have, gather the gold, buy more tracks, go forward. There's some different objectives on the way that kind of divert the gameplay from just building a rail and just going forward. There's the little side rooms. There's the gold rush like moment, which I think is really fun, or whatever it's called. The one where they get TP'd down and they go in this big lava with rocks thing where you have to mine as much gold. I think that's very fun. But again, it's probably gonna end up landing in a similar spot as Build Mart in the long term. I can't comment on that right now because it is, it's only been played once and I do have some recency bias. Right now though, I would say Railroad Rush would be placed above Bingo for now. I don't know if this will be the trend continuing forward because I don't know how much gameplay can be changed about Railroad Rush. But because of recency bias, potentially, it's going to land in the above average tier between Hole in the Wall and Bingo. That's what my gut reaction, Red and Link style, gut check. That's my instinct on this. Next up, Rocket Spleef Rush. If my sweet baby, I would have put you S tier, but what have they done to you? The durability, no, it was. As expected, not the greatest, but the Rocket Spleef Rush is still such a good game, and it's gonna be at least in the good tier. But it was always in my S tier, man. Old Rocket Spleef was so goated, and Rocket Spleef Rush seems really cool. Obviously, I've never played Rocket Spleef Rush, the one without the not MCCI version. Okay, the non MCCI version I've never played, but it seems so cool. It seems watching like a Philza or a Pizza Hut play that, it's so cool. Okay, it's so sick. I don't know if the durability necessarily will ruin it. I think it'll still make it really good, but it's definitely not an S. I wouldn't like. I would have debated putting it here originally, right? But I don't know if I can do that nowadays, just because of that durability thing. I don't know if that will be removed, but I do think it's holding it back ever so slightly. I do think, as much as Rocket Spleef is one of those games where, yes, there is that skill-based element to it, I do think it still lands pretty high. It's either going to be like right here probably, because Rocket Spleef Rush, it's a very unique game mode. It's not so much a spleef game anymore, if I'm going to keep it real. Like, yeah, you can blow up some blocks below someone's feet, and they could get eliminated through that. But this more recent adaptation, very much more so seems like a PvP game, which is funny because of certain comments that were made about the game in the past year or so. Anyways, yeah, Rocket Spleef Rush, like I said, Original version, I really enjoy it. I think Electro games are very fun, or can be very fun. I do think those Electro racing games are held back by map knowledge, which is similar to Ace Race. But I think in terms of MCC's overall roster of games, if Rocket Leaf is picked, I'm happy. You know, I'm thinking about like the reaction as to like when these games get picked. I'm like, oh, fun. And like, you know, everything in the B tier right now, you know, or in D tier, Build Mart, honestly, I'd probably change my reaction. I think consistency-wise, I'd be like, yeah, whatever. Like, Build Mart, I'm like, sure. Parkour Warrior, I'm like, meh. But I can see that in terms of gameplay, it's better. B tier, I'm like, ooh, okay. A tier, I'm like, ooh. And then S tier, I'm like, okay. Do I think Rocket Speed Rush is better than Ace Race is a very good question. I'd honestly argue yes. And I'm just going to ignore the MCCI cooldown thing because I do think that holds back the game in terms of being friendly for the newer and weaker players because it is another level of skill that is incorporated that already makes a difficult to understand game more difficult. Okay, Rocket Speed Rush was already difficult. If you look at players like Masayoshi in the Twitch Rivals MCC, I think Masayoshi or John ended up dying like first few players every single round because it is just a really hard game to understand. Add this durability factor to it. Keep in mind, if someone doesn't get explained how this works, they will just not be able to perform in this game. It definitely holds it back a little bit. But I'm biased, and I think Rocket Speed Rush is such a cool game. And I just hope that they change their mind and they bring it back to what it was before, please. Anyways, Rocket Speed Rush's top spots. We're gonna ignore Dodgebolts. Well, actually, now it's debatable. Is SOT better than Dodgebolt? Is a very, very good question. I'd argue yes. Sands of Time is kind of unanimously seen as the best Minecraft event game. And it's kind of had that title for like a couple years now. And I completely understand and agree. Look, dungeon crawlers are just very fun games in general. And I think SOT is a very good adaptation of this in terms of Minecraft. Not just Minecraft, but also just Minecraft events specifically. It has a level of competition and mystery to it that makes it very entertaining to watch. I don't know if it's super entertaining to watch necessarily while it's being played, but I know that playing the game is sick. Look, if SOT had like its own separate game, it could even be a Noxru map, and you know, it had like a multiplayer audience that was actively playing it, I'd buy the game. And that says a lot, because I don't buy games very often. I think SOT is fantastic, and I would love to see I'd love to see it in MCC Twitch Rivals, obviously. I'd love to be able to play it. I think it's unlikely, unfortunately, that it'll be in there. But it is one of those games where I'm like, damn, I want to play this so bad. Because it is really cool. Yeah, I like the teamwork aspect of it. I like the variety of rooms. I like, you know, the way the game works. The scoring is really cool. It's purely team based because it is team split scoring, etc. And I think it's pretty epic. I don't really think it's debatable that SOT is at least S tier. Whether you say it's the best is, of course, opinion based, but I'd say it lands pretty high. Next up, Sky Battle. Now, Sky Battle is an awkward one because I used to really, really like Sky Battle like 3 years ago. Despite being really bad at it, I was under the impression that PvP games were really entertaining to watch and Sky Battle was really cool. I have since changed my mind on Sky games in general. As of very recent, I've kind of started to dislike the games, the Sky games quite a bit. I don't think Sky Battle is mid though, but I do definitely think it is the second worst PvP game in the MCC roster. I think Meltdown and BattleBox do have it beat, but I think Sky Battle still has, you know, its value. I think it's very, very cool. It has potential to be so sick, but it also has potential to be so meh. It's just so inconsistent, okay? It's so inconsistent. because you can have a team that gets completely jumped and eliminated from the round right off the bat, and then they sit there and spectate for like a solid 4 or 5 minutes. But then you can have like a Fruitberries who just runs down mid, starts building bridges like it's Fortnite, cranks 90s on people and freaking TNT cannons everyone, and then ends the round winning in like first place with like a total of like 16 kills, and you're just like, that's so sick. But that's such a 1 out of 40 experience, you know? That's the problem. It's a 1 out of 40 experience because there's only so few people who can pull that off, and there's so many people who will be on the other side of that, you know, of the double-edged sword, and be, you know, eliminated by a Fruitberries right away. I don't think Sky Battle can lane below Grid Runners though, but I do like Grid Runners, and like I said, there is that niche potential for Sky Battle to be really cool. But I think times have changed, man. I think times really have changed, so I might just keep it there. I know some people will say Sky Battle is S tier, but I'm just negatively biased towards it. I'm not really a big fan. I think I'm gonna make a little change in my tier list, because next up is SG, and I think Buildmart is thus moving up to C tier because SG is in D tier. Buildmart being moved up. If C tier is average, I think Buildmart's pretty average. It's not bad. It's just fine. SG though is bad. I understand that SG has its fan base, and I understand that SG can be really entertaining to watch if you watch the right POV, okay? If you watch like a Sapnap and completely run everyone down and just completely wipe the competition. I'm sure if like Feinberg played it, it would be really fun. I'm sure if Shane played it, it would be really fun. But SG is just a game that is so flawed inherently, and this is not MCC's adaptation that's the fault, or that's at fault. It's just survival games in general is so flawed. And I say that as someone who typically does pretty good in SG games, okay? I like playing them sometimes because I'm good at them. But like, it's definitely a flawed game, because if a team or a player gets eliminated early, you just have to sit there for like 10 minutes and do absolutely nothing. And that holds it back so much, okay? It holds it back so much. Another thing that has come to light as of very recent is that SG kind of works a lot better as just a multiplayer server game mode rather than a Minecraft event game mode, because of that, you know, the high risk, high reward type of gameplay. SG also used to always have the biggest point differential, and it has kind of some RNG to it as well. And I feel like it always ended up being just that game that kind of did too much to the scores. You know, losing survival games pretty much loses you the event. Winning survival games can make you automatically place top 2 no matter what. And I think that's flawed. It's just very flawed. It has too much impact, and it's, yeah, a little flawed. So in that standard, or by that standard, it is definitely the worst MCC game, and solid D tier. Sorry, Ripcord, I know you put it in S. This is funny. Sky Battle and SG in S tier, and here we are putting SG and D and Sky Battle in the worst above average game. Debatable to even put it average, honestly. In terms of MCC, nah, it has its potential. It has its potential for sure. I definitely understand that. Or I'm sure some people are going to be like angry in the comments, being like, "How is Grid Runners above Sky Battle? You suck! What? But Fruitberries will smack you around in Sky Battle. Okay, as punishment." Look, man, I like team games. That's it. Next up, or last and somewhat least, to get to her side, I'm gonna say to get to her side is below average. No, it's average, because it has Terror Swoop Wars. Look, to get to her side, I think is a flawed game mode, because punching sucks, okay? I hate punching. It's so annoying, okay? It's so annoying. Stop. Take it out of the game, please. Punching means that any player at any moment during a movement-based game can be griefed from performing well in a movement-based game. And I think that's stupid. I think that's stupid. So stupid. I understand it's maybe supposed to be a silly game, but one thing with movement is that movement is about optimization, efficiency, and if a player can disrupt that, I get mad, and I understand other people get mad too. Look, I don't want to have to deal with frauds who happen to be called Antfrost or something else, and Greninja, and It's Finished Daniel punching me from behind, and I just get freaking launched off the map, okay? I don't like that. Not a fan. Not a fan at all. But the redemption of To Get to Your Side when Terra Swoop Force is in is genuinely insane. It is insane. And if it wasn't for TSF, To Get to Your Side would be right here. But Terra Swoop Force single-handedly moves it to at least an average game, because when Terra Swoop Force is in, it's cool, okay? I love Terra Swoop Force. It's such a good map, and I hope it's in permanently. Just swap between the two levels, add the third level or whatever. I just love Terra Swoop Force, and that's carrying To Get to Your Side. But it is going to be lower than Build Mart, because everything else I'm not that big of a fan of, because I just don't like the core concept of the game. And yeah. Anyways, here's my tier list for MCC Games. Let me know what you agree with, what you do not agree with. This is based on my gut instinct. I'm sure that if I spent a couple hours talking about games, these rankings might change ever so slightly. This is definitely not a very consistent tier list, because some of these games are ranked on the current status of the game, and some of these are ranked on the old status of the games. In particular, Rockets Refresh is more so ranked on the old version, whereas Grid Runners is more so ranked on the current version, because I think if Grid Runners, for example, had a more consistently fresh batch of games, it would rank a bit higher. Also, recency bias for Railroad Rush might come into play. Maybe it'll be better, maybe it'll be worse, etc., etc. Anyways, thank you all for watching. Let me know your thoughts on this, and hopefully you enjoy these long Mogul mails. They'll happen every now and then. Alright, see you later.